He abandoned his daughter. My parents' lie blew up when she showed up to the rehearsal. My name is Mara Sinclair. I am 31 years old. 3 weeks before my wedding, a woman I had never met in my life walked into my rehearsal dinner, looked across a room of 60 people, and said my father's name in a voice that made every conversation stop at once. She was 26 years old. She had his eyes. And in the next 4 minutes, everything my parents had told me about my father for the past decade was dismantled, publicly, completely, and without any possibility of being rebuilt. I did not cry. I did not leave the room. I stood at the center of it, and I let the truth land, because the truth I would learn that night had been trying to reach me for a very long time. Before I tell you everything, take a second to like and subscribe and drop your country in the comments. Now let me take you back to where this really started. My father, Robert Sinclair, left our family when I was 19. That is the version I was given. My mother sat me down at the kitchen table the summer after my first year of college and told me that my father had chosen to walk away from us, from me, from everything we had built as a family, because he had decided his own freedom mattered more than his responsibilities. She said it with the specific, controlled grief of a woman who had been practicing the sentence. She said he had another family somewhere that he had kept hidden, that he had a daughter from a relationship before my mother, a daughter he had also abandoned, and that abandonment was simply who Robert Sinclair was at his core. She said she was telling me because I deserved to know the kind of man my father really was. My grandmother, my mother's mother, confirmed it. My aunt confirmed it. My mother's oldest friend, a woman named Cecile, who had known our family since before I was born, confirmed it. Every voice I trusted pointed in the same direction. My father was a man who left. My father was a man who abandoned. My father was not worth the grief I was pouring into his absence. I believed them. Of course I believed them. I was 19 years old, and the people I loved most in the world were unanimous. And when you are 19 and heartbroken, and the people you trust are unanimous, you do not go looking for the other side of the story. You grieve, and then you slowly stop grieving, and then you build a version of yourself that does not include him. I did not speak to my father again for 12 years. In that time, I graduated. I built a career as a landscape architect, designing residential and commercial outdoor spaces for a firm in the city. I made good friends. I fell in love at 27 with a man named Cole Merritt, who was patient and funny, and had the quality I had always valued most in people, which was that he said exactly what he meant, and meant exactly what he said. We got engaged on a hiking trail in October, just the two of us, no audience, no performance. I called my mother from the trailhead. She cried. She said she was so happy for me. I threw myself into the wedding planning with the enthusiasm of someone building something new. Cole's family was warm and involved. My mother and my aunt were heavily present, opinionated in the loving, slightly exhausting way of women who have been waiting for this event for years. We booked a venue, chose a date, built a guest list of 112 people. Life felt, from the outside, entirely in order. The rehearsal dinner was held on a Thursday evening, 3 weeks before the ceremony, at a private dining room in a restaurant called Hartwell's on the east side of the city. 60 guests, immediate family, the wedding party, close friends, round tables, candlelight, the easy noise of people who are happy to be together. Cole's parents had flown in from out of state. My mother was at the head table in a dress she had bought specifically for the occasion. My aunt was beside her. Everything was exactly as it was supposed to be. I was standing near the bar with Cole's sister Petra when the door opened. She was not someone I recognized. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a simple navy dress, and carrying herself with the particular stillness of someone who has arrived somewhere after a long time deciding whether to come. She stood in the doorway for a moment, and her eyes moved across the room the way eyes move when they are looking for something specific. They landed on my mother. My mother saw her at the same moment. What happened to my mother's face in that instant is something I will never fully be able to describe. It was not surprise exactly. It was the expression of a person who has been anticipating a knock on the door for a decade and has just heard it. The woman walked into the room. My mother stood up. "You need to leave," my mother said. She said it quietly, meant for the woman and no one else. But the table nearest to her had gone silent, and quiet travels fast in a room of 60 people when the emotional register shifts suddenly. "I'm not leaving," the woman said. Her voice was calm, not aggressive, the calm of someone who has made a decision they have been sitting with for a long time. "I've been trying to reach Mara for 8 months. She doesn't know I exist, and I think she should." The room was almost completely silent now. I was already walking toward them. I don't remember deciding to walk. I was simply there, between my mother and this woman I had never seen, standing in the candlelit dining room of Hartwell's with 60 people watching. "Who are you?" I asked. She looked at me, and close up, the resemblance was not subtle. The line of her jaw, the shape of her eyes, the particular way her brows sat, slightly angled, a detail I had always thought was mine alone because I had never seen it on anyone else. I was looking at it on someone else. "My name is Lily Harmon," she said. "My father is Robert Sinclair." She paused for one breath. "I think he's your father too." My aunt was on her feet. "This is not the place. He didn't abandon her," Lily said, not loudly, but clearly enough that the room heard every word. She was looking at me, only at me. "He didn't abandon either of us. He's been trying to reach you for 12 years. They told him you didn't want contact. They told me the same thing about you." The sentence landed in the room like something physical. I turned to my mother. She had sat back down. She was looking at the table in front of her, not at me, not at Lily. Her hands were folded in her lap, and she was very, very still. "Mom," I said. She did not answer. "Mom." My voice was different now. Something had happened to it. "Look at me." She looked up, and what I saw on her face was not innocence. It was not indignation. It was the particular exhaustion of a person who has been carrying a specific weight for a very long time and has just put it down and does not yet know how to stand without it. Cole was beside me. I felt his hand on my arm, steady and present, saying nothing, just there. "Is she telling the truth?" I asked my mother. My mother opened her mouth. "Eleanor," my aunt said sharply, a warning. "Is she telling the truth?" I said again, and this time it was not a question. My mother closed her eyes. And in the silence of Hartwell's private dining room, with 60 people holding their breath and candles, throwing warm light across a table set for a celebration, she said, very quietly, "It was complicated." I have thought about those 3 words every day since that night. It was complicated. Not no. Not your misunderstanding. Not she's lying. It was complicated. 3 words that are the architecture of a confession without the courage of one. I looked back at Lily. "How did you find me?" I asked. "A mutual contact," she said. "Someone who knew your father and knew of you. I've had your name for 8 months. I wrote twice. I called once. I didn't hear back." She paused. "I think the letters may not have reached you." I thought about the mail that my mother collected, always, because our building's mailbox was near the parking structure she passed every morning. The mail she sorted at the kitchen counter when she visited, a habit so domestic and unremarkable that I had never once thought to question it. "I need some air," I said to Cole. He nodded. I walked out of Hartwell's through the back corridor that led to a small courtyard with a stone bench and a boxwood hedge and the sound of the city beyond the wall. Lily followed because I did not tell her not to. We sat on the bench in the cold November air, and she told me everything. Our father had not left. That was the first and largest thing. He and my mother had separated, genuinely, painfully, the way marriages end when two people have grown into different lives. But the separation had been mutual, and my father had not gone silently. He had called. He had written. In the first 2 years, he had appeared at the apartment twice, both times turned away by my mother, who told him, each time, that I was not ready to see him, that I needed more time, that he should give me space. He had believed her because he did not know what else to believe. He was operating on the information available to him, which was entirely controlled by the person who had decided he should not be in my life. The story about his other daughter, about Lily, was not a lie in the way I had understood it. Lily was real. She existed. She was his daughter from a relationship before my mother, but she had not been abandoned. She had been raised by her own mother, had known Robert Sinclair as a present and involved father throughout her childhood, and had had no knowledge of me beyond the fact that her father had a daughter from his second marriage, who, she had been told, wanted nothing to do with him. 2 lies, constructed in parallel, each one making the other more believable. Each one designed to ensure that my father's 2 daughters never compared notes. "He's sick," Lily said. She said it quietly, with the steadiness of someone who has had time to sit with the sentence. Not critically, but his health has been the reason I pushed harder this year to find you. He talks about you. He has talked about you for 12 years. He thinks you hate him. I sat on that stone bench in the cold for a long time without speaking. I thought about the version of my father I had built in his absence. The man who leaves. The man who abandons. The template my mother had handed me at 19, and that I had used unconsciously to shape every thought I had about fathers and loyalty and what men do when things become difficult. I thought about how that template had lived inside me during my relationship with Cole, during my choices, during the way I loved and the things I feared and the walls I had built in places I had never been able to fully explain even to myself. I thought about 12 years. Eventually I said, "Does he know you came tonight?" "No," she said. "He would have told me not to. He gave up trying to contact you years ago. He decided, eventually, that if you truly didn't want him in your life, he owed you that peace." She looked at her hands. I couldn't let it stay like that. Not with everything changing with his health. I couldn't let it stay a lie. "Thank you," I said. She looked up. "For coming," I said. "I know this cost something. Thank you for coming." We went back inside. The rehearsal dinner had not resumed. People were at their tables in the specific, suspended way of guests who are uncertain whether the event they came to is still happening. Cole's parents were speaking quietly to Cole near the bar. My aunt was beside my mother at the head table, murmuring something I could not hear. The room turned to watch me walk back in. I went to my mother. I did not want to do this publicly. I want to be clear about that. It was not the audience I wanted. It was the answer. I stood in front of her table, and I kept my voice quiet enough that only she and my aunt could hear me fully, though the room was still silent enough that I cannot be certain who caught what. "How long did you intercept his letters?" I asked. My mother said nothing. "The phone calls in the first 2 years," I said. "Did you tell him I didn't want to talk, or did you not tell me he called?" My aunt said, "Mara, this is not." "Both," my mother said, so quietly I nearly didn't catch it. "Both." I stood there for a moment. The candles on the table were burning down. Somewhere behind me I heard someone set a glass down very carefully. "I need you to leave," I said to my mother. "And Aunt Ruth, I need you both to leave, and I'll call you tomorrow." My mother looked up at me. She looked in that moment very old and very frightened and very much like a woman who had told herself a story about what she was doing for so long that she had almost forgotten it was a story. She looked like a woman who loved her daughter and had destroyed something irreplaceable in the name of that love and was only now, in the candlelight of Hartwell's, beginning to understand the full dimension of what she had done. Mara. She started. Tomorrow, I said. She stood. She picked up her wrap. She and my aunt moved through the room toward the door, and the room let them go in silence. The door closed. I turned to the room. 60 people, every one of them someone I loved or someone Cole loved, every one of them having just witnessed something they had not come here to witness. I'm sorry, I said, for all of that. This isn't. My voice broke once, and I let it and kept going. This is not the evening any of us planned. But I'm not leaving, and I'd like the rest of the night to be what it was supposed to be if everyone is willing. I looked at Cole. He was already smiling, just barely. The small, certain smile of a man who was not going anywhere. I have a rehearsal dinner to get through, and a wedding in 3 weeks, and I would very much like to eat something. There was a beat. Then Cole's father laughed, a big, genuine sound that broke the held breath of the room, and people started moving and talking, and the servers, who had been frozen at the kitchen corridor, began to bring out the first course, and Hartwell's private dining room became, slowly, what it had been meant to be. Lily stayed. I asked her to. She sat at a table with 2 of Cole's cousins, who were warm and curious and asked her nothing difficult, and she ate dinner and laughed at something Cole's best man said and looked, by the end of the evening, less like a woman who had just walked into the hardest moment of her year, and more like a person who had set down something heavy and was not yet sure what to do with the lightness. I called my mother the next morning. The conversation was long and not easy, and I am not going to give you every detail of it, because some conversations belong only to the people having them. What I will tell you is that she did not defend herself, she explained, which is different. She told me about the fear she had carried, the fear that if my father returned, I would choose him over her, that she would lose me to him, that she would be left again in the way she had already been left. She told me that she had told herself she was protecting me. She told me she knew, now, that was not all she was doing. I listened. I asked the questions I needed to ask. I did not tell her, that morning, whether I forgave her, because I did not know yet, and I did not want to say something I did not mean. I called my father for the first time in 12 years that afternoon. He answered on the second ring. He sounded like himself, older and like himself. He said my name, and then did not say anything else for a moment, and I understood why, because I was doing the same thing. We talked for 2 hours. I will keep most of that conversation private also. But I want to tell you one thing he said, because I have thought about it every day since. He said, I never stopped talking to you. In my head, every time something happened, good or bad, you were the first person I wanted to tell. He paused. I'd saved up 12 years of things to tell you. I was at my wedding 3 weeks later. My father walked me down the aisle, and my mother sat in the front row on my side, and Lily sat 2 rows back next to Cole's cousins, who had apparently exchanged numbers with her at the rehearsal dinner. It was not a simple day. There were moments that required more grace than I had known I possessed. But it was a true day. The truest day I had known in years, because everyone in that room was exactly who they were, and I knew exactly who I was, and there were no stories being maintained by anyone at the cost of anyone else. At the reception, during the first dance, I looked across the room and saw my father talking to Cole's father near the bar, laughing at something, a man I had been told was absent, making his presence unremarkable and easy and real. I thought about the rehearsal dinner, about Lily walking through that door, about the knock that had been waiting for a decade to land, about the 12 years that had been shaped by a lie told in love, which is somehow the most damaging kind, not the lie told in cruelty, which you can defend against, but the lie told in the name of something genuine, which gets inside you because the love it comes wrapped in is also real. Some things you cannot get back. 12 years is 12 years. The versions of those years in which my father and I were in each other's lives exist somewhere I cannot visit. I have learned to hold that loss honestly, not to minimize it, not to perform acceptance I don't feel, but to hold it as what it is, real, and not the whole story. My father came to dinner the following Sunday. He brought flowers, sunflowers, not roses, the same flowers he used to bring my mother on ordinary Sundays when I was small, a detail I had not remembered until I saw them. We sat at my table, Cole and I and my father and Lily, and we ate and talked, and by the end of the evening it felt, not like we had recovered something, but like we had begun something that was entirely its own. My mother and I are in progress. That is the most accurate thing I can say. She is present in my life, and she is trying, in the genuine, effortful way of a person who has accepted accountability without conditions. And I am letting her try, which is the most I can offer right now, and maybe the most that is needed. There is a photograph on my phone from the wedding reception. Cole took it without my knowing. It is me and my father and Lily standing by the window at the venue, the three of us mid-conversation, all of us laughing at something. None of us are looking at the camera. We look like people who have known each other for years. We had known each other for 6 weeks. I look at that photograph sometimes when I want to remember what the actual shape of the story is. Not the 12 years of absence, not the rehearsal dinner and the door opening and my mother's face. But this, 3 people who were kept from each other, laughing by a window, building in 6 weeks, what someone else's fear had taken 12 years to prevent. That is what I want to remember. That is the whole truth of it.